and bring up a couple slides to look at. It didn't share. Okay, there we are. It's called problem framing, and it's different. It's a slightly different way versus problem solving. Basically, what problem framing is um, it's a perspective you put on a problem rather than jumping in to solve it. So it calls for conceptual versatility, and it's what I'm trying to think about is getting you to expand your conceptual versatility when you look at situations. And this really gets at assumptions about the nature of a problem. And the reason I use the word frame, or why this terminology, is picture yourself in a room looking out a window, and reality is in a frame. Depending on where you sit, depending on where you sit in the room, you can look out through the same frame and get a different perspective. And that's why I like the word use the metaphor of the frame. And it's perspective versus diagnosis in terms of things. Some of our common myths we have about when we diagnose a problem, the single most common approach, and you hear this all the time. You root for your favorite sports team and they're losing. 9 out of 10 times, people are going to start blaming people, and and 9 times out of 10, it's not necessarily the people that are the problem. Get rid of the coach, or etc. And another common myth in problem solving is, well, it's the bureaucracy. You can never get anything done around here. Our hands are tied. And then another one is, I don't have enough power to solve it. As soon as you diagnose a problem as one of these three things, then you can easily wash your hands of it. You don't need to get involved. So this model I'm going to talk about, there's 4 frames we typically look at if we see problems or organizational situations. One is the structural frame, and I'm going to say more about each one. Another is the human frame. A third is the political frame, and the last one is symbolic. Now, in school, in business schools, and we've learned a lot about the first two, the structural and the human, but we don't talk about political as much, or symbolic. And I maintain, and I tend to look at political as a neutral word. I think politics is a reality. And I think one of your leadership skills, leadership abilities, is the ability to be a good politician. And, I think next week I'm having you read the chapter on power and influence. A lot of what that chapter discusses around power and influence relates to you being a good politician. But let me talk about the 4 frames a minute. The structural frame emphasizes things like formal roles and relationships. It's structures, it's the structures you set up to get the work done. And every organization divides labor. We have rules, we have policies, we have hierarchies to make decisions, to coordinate things. And then if there's a problem, if you're a person who sees the world through structure eyes, if you're faced with a problem, your first response might be, we need to change the structure. We need some more rules and procedures. We need some more policies. If you're ever in a meeting and you're discussing a problem and you hear someone say, we really got to look at policies and procedures. That's a structuralist talking. So your typical solutions you might have are to reorganize. And a popular metaphor is seeing the organization as if it's a machine. And some of the big assumptions behind this look at the world is organizations exist to accomplish goals. Uh, Organizations have to find the right structure. Organizations are best when they operate rationally. Specialization permits higher levels of performance. You coordinate through authority and rules and regulations, and you can systematically design organizations. A lot of this goes back to one of the earliest books in the 1900s was a book on bureaucracy, which a lot of organizations in the early 1900s, et cetera, were run by nepotism, favoritism, and a big thinker. I'm blocking on his name right now. Wrote a book on bureaucracy, and this was to try and get all that favoritism out of organizations. So that's a structural frame. A second approach is the human frame. The focus here is on people. Individuals have needs, feelings. The goal of an organization should be to fit the organization to the people. And you must find a form, an organization that will enable people to get the job done while feeling good about what they are doing. So if you see a problem in the organization, you're going to say, hey, human needs are frustrated, people aren't motivated, etc. So this kind of looks at the human. You're trying to capitalize on human talent, so you have to fit the organization to the people. And assumptions about this frame are organizations serve human needs. Organizations and people need each other. If the fit is poor between people in the organization, both will suffer. Either the organization will exploit or the individual will exploit. When the fit is good, both benefit. And if both are benefiting, people's goals and organizations' goals will be met. So if you see a problem, your first instinct is to see it as a people problem. The metaphor is we're one big family here. That's how you look at the organization. If you take the structure, we talk about football a lot, and you talk about coaches. You ever hear football organizations talk about a coach bringing their system in? And there's a coach with a good system, and they bring the system in. Their goal is to fit the people to their system that they have. That's a structuralist. Whereas you have the coach that goes out and tries to find the best talent and then fit his system to what the talent is. That's kind of we see some of these things play out in life. So those are two. There's a third one, and I'm going to spend a little more time on these two. There's a political frame that also is at work. Organizations are arenas of scarce resources. Power and influence affect allocation of resources. Conflict is expected. You have to be able to bargain, use coercion, compromise. They're all part of everyday life. If we have a problem in our organization, it's because of an uneven distribution of power or a power vacuum. So political skill and acumen are important. And some of the assumptions here are The most important decisions any organization makes is the allocation of resources. And basically, you look at organizations not through the hierarchy, but coalitions of interest groups. And interest groups have different values. And because of that, change is slow. Organizational goals happen because of bargaining, negotiating, vying for position, vying for budget money, you name it. Power and conflict are central features of organizational life. And the metaphor here is a jungle. And then finally, I'm going to quickly talk about the symbolic frame. And I have a couple videos I wanted to show you. But the symbolic frame, sometimes we talk about the culture of an organization. And if I got into a discussion with each of you and ask about the culture of your organization, your organization has different ways of doing things. And the culture in an organization are kind of unwritten rules about how people behave, symbols in your culture, certain things have meaning. This is kind of the opposite of the rational structured. It talks about shared values. And organizations are driven by rituals, stories, myths, rather than rules and authority. And you typically might associate these with some charismatic leaders. Organization is drama. The problem is if you see an organization, there's bad actors, or symbols have lost their meaning, or rituals lose their power. Organizations going through dramatic change, going through severe decline. This is when you see a lot of symbols and things happening. Symbols lose their meaning. People get meaning from certain things they see happening. You can improve things through stories and symbols and myths. Think about logos your company uses, or famous logos out there every time you see the Nike swish. That all gets at this symbolic. It says something. That Nike swish says, hey, we're an organization on the move, etc. What is most important is not what happened, but the meaning that people attach to things. It's the way people interpret events that's important. Many events are ambiguous. In an organization where there's great uncertainty, people attach a lot of meaning to symbols. Ambiguity and uncertainty undermine rational approaches to analysis, problem solving. Humans create symbols to reduce confusion and give meaning. Think about, just think about religion a minute. It's loaded with ritual and symbols. Why? Because it deals with things that there's no answers to. The only way we can deal with them is through stories, rituals. And that's exactly what happens in organizations. Different things become symbolic. How about at your place of work, where certain people have designated parking spots? That I know things like that grate on people, or certain dining rooms if you reach a certain level, and all of these kind of things have symbols and meaning attached to them. So each of these frames I described to you has its own vision of reality. If you can become a little more astute at taking a look at a situation from each of these four frames, you get a greater appreciation of the depth of organizational life and your approach to issues you may be confronting. Effective managers rely intuitively on different frames, blending them into a personal theory of work behavior. Understanding all these frames can enrich your intuition or increase your ability to act effectively in really complicated and ambiguous situations. Now, I'm presenting, this model. There's a lot more depth to it, but I, let me step off and just stop for a minute and play a video for you, a couple videos. One of them is to kind of get at the political frame a little bit, and the first one I'm going to show you was an interview on 60 Minutes. I don't know if you've ever heard of Admiral Rickover. He was the father of the nuclear navy. He was the admiral who really invented the nuclear navy. And I'm only going to play about 4 minutes of it. I wanted you to get a sense of this person. He was probably, in this video was done, he was 84 years old, and he was still an admiral. And you might ask yourself, how could this guy be existing in a very structured military today? And so I'm take a minute while I share this with you and think of what frame might be at work with Admiral Rickover.
The question should be, what should be the role of educated or intellectual people in the United States? Now, does that sound like a better question?
That's a fine question.
In an interview or on a ship, Hyman George Rickover likes to take command. Even at 84, the admiral can inspect a submarine with the agility of an ensign.
Just remember, he's still an active admiral right now.
Rickover's mind, these are his submarines. He designed the reactor, he trained the men. 1 out of 4 admirals commanding ships today was trained by Rickover. His nuclear empire became known as Rickover's Navy, and it ran solely Rickover's way.
And you just thought that the rules of the Navy were silly.
I don't know, but I never read the rules. I prohibited it. We never had a book of Navy regulations in my office. I prohibited it. One time some guy brought it in, and I told him to get the hell out and burn it.
Because you wanted them to think.
I wanted them to think. If they knew what their job was, they didn't need a book of regulations.
How can you run a Navy if everybody in it acts like you do? If everybody considers
I never told the others how to act. I acted my own way, my own genius.
But you know they said that you were unaccountable.
I was 100% accountable. If anything had ever gone wrong with a nuclear ship, to whom would they have pointed their finger at? What they mean is I would not do all the things they asked me to do. I did the things I thought was right.
But that's not working within the system. Isn't that what the military is about, working within the system?
My job was not to work within the system. My job was to get things done and make this country strong.
What he got done was this: the Nautilus, the world's first nuclear-powered submarine, launched in 1952. The machine that would change military strategy forever. This submarine could stay underwater for months. Rickover stunned the world by building the Nautilus from scratch in only 5 years, leaving the Russians far behind. Many people called him the best engineer the Navy ever had. Today, there are 141 ships in the nuclear fleet. But once, there was just the man and his obsession with science, not saluting, with engineering, not command.
What drew you down into the body of the ship to learn about why the cranks cranked and the...
Oh, for Christ's sake, what the hell is there about standing up and saluting and dressing up in the uniform? You can put dummies to do that job.
That's why you became an engineer?
Well, I was in the Navy, and I could do more, and I could learn more. I couldn't see myself just standing off to the deck watches and saluting and all that nonsense.
Mm-hmm. But why did you work so hard?
I was getting paid for it.
No, why did you work
I would have worked hard at any job. No job I ever undertook that I didn't work hard on.
Why? Why did it all matter
Because
to
that's
you
what
so
being a
much?
human being is, to do the best you can under any circumstances.
What is at the heart of leadership? Is it in personality, charisma?
No. For example, I have the charisma of a chipmunk. So what the hell difference does that make?
It was certainly not his personality that won Rickover 3 Distinguished Service Medals. And to celebrate the Nautilus, a ticker tape parade through the streets of New York, a long way from the tiny town in Russian-occupied Poland where Rickover was born, the son of a tailor. For the boy who landed at Ellis Island at the
What? Are you there? You hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh,
Yep.
okay. Did that stop sharing?
Yeah, I just see you now.
Oh, okay. There's something weird happened. Any want to comment on what frame might be at work here? Did that come across to anyone? Anyone want to venture a guess?
Human?
What, Dalton?
Human?
Human. Well, what, what were some signs of the human frame?
I just kind of thought he kind of let like people do their thing. Like he wasn't really like by the book.
Well, he wasn't by the book, that's for sure. And anyone else have any thoughts? Do you think, Dalton, do you think he would care much what other people thought?
Absolutely not. No.
Anyone else want to guess on a frame or frame you might think?
I would say symbolic, um, because he's really not, he's not focusing so much on rules, on authority. He's focusing more on, the meaning behind what he's doing, what rituals he's really following.
There's a lot of symbolic elements in there. How do you think he survived, though? He's 84. Generals at the time had to be retired at 65. Here he's still at.
He must have known somebody political.
Well, that's one of the points. You remember, I don't know if you picked up early on it, he trained one in every four admiral. And this nuclear fleet had 100 and some ships. I don't have time for and I don't have the rest of the video, but it goes on to talk about Jimmy Carter, one of our presidents, trained under him. And they asked Jimmy Carter as the president, he was still an admiral when Carter, if he said, some days he lets me think I'm the boss. But what he used to do, he used to get congressmen's wives to launch all of his ships. He would make it. He had congressmen, senators. So we'll talk. Probably the most salient feature is the political that enabled him to survive. There was a lot of people in the Navy that didn't like him, not following the structure. And he was very tough on defense contractors. There were a ton of people that tried to get rid of him. And basically, when we talk more about the political, you'll see where the political is what really kept him alive. Now it's a pretty I wish I could play the whole have the whole video for you, but he's the type of character that really was able to survive all these years. Um, the just by what he was able to do with a network of people both inside and outside the Navy that he had on his side. And what I'm saying is you won't see it to this extreme degree, politics working out. But I'm gonna talk about a little bit about how to be a skilled politician. The second one I want to show you is I don't know if you've ever heard Martin Luther King's speech. This is about 7 minutes, and I want you. This is clearly the symbolic frame, and I want you to think about. This is maybe one of the most powerful speeches in America that we have recorded in terms of the change that it caused. And I want you to think about, from a symbolic point of view, some of the things I'm talking about. So let me play that for you. And this one's only about 6 minutes long. Think about how he used symbols in here throughout this whole speech.
I have the pleasure to present to you Dr. Martin Luther King, Jr.
Happy to join with you today in what will go down in history as the greatest demonstration for freedom in the history of our nation. Five score years ago, a great American in whose symbolic shadow we stand today signed the Emancipation Proclamation. This momentous decree came as a great beacon light of hope to millions of Negro slaves who had been seared in the flames of withering injustice. It came as a joyous daybreak to end the long night of their captivity. But 100 years later, the Negro still is not free. 100 years later, the life of the Negro is still sadly crippled by the manacles of segregation and the chains of discrimination. 100 years later, the Negro lives on a lonely island of poverty in the midst of a vast ocean of material prosperity. This nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. And every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight, and the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is a faith that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day. This will be the day when all of God's children will be able to sing with new meaning, "My country, tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride. From every mountainside, let freedom ring. And if America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom ring. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom ring. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom ring. From the heightening Alleghanies of Pennsylvania, let freedom ring. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom ring. From the curvaceous slopes of California. Not only that, let freedom ring from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom ring from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom ring from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom ring, and when this happens, when we allow freedom ring, when we let it ring from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual. Free at last, free at last. Thank God Almighty, we are free at last.
Okay. Just to, think about that in a minute. Let me just say a word about the context of that whole speech. This was 1963. The civil rights movement was kind of in disarray when this happened, and of course that led to the passage of the civil rights legislation, which was pretty powerful legislation, ending segregation. Think about this. Think about it. What if he would have stood up there and said, "I have a plan," and he goes on to explain the plan, or here's what we need to do to get together, and wouldn't have the same message. I mean, just using that word, "I have a plan," throws it. But the whole notion of "I have a dream," what symbols? What symbolic stuff did you see happening that gave power to that? If we talk about from a symbolic point of view.
I think the most powerful one to me, at least, was talking about how people of different races, the white man and the black man, could sit down at the table of brotherhood. The table of brotherhood.
What about American symbols he used? I mean, where was he standing? Right in front of Abraham Lincoln. And he quoted from actual American documents, the Declaration of Independence, Constitution. He quoted from a popular song, so he used all the symbols of America, and it really galvanized the country. But I think you can see the power of using symbol. Now, you're not in your life in organizations, it's not always going to be that dramatic. But this is just as true in organizations where you talk about values, symbols that give meaning to what's going on. Um, when leaders come together, it's an attempt to give meaning to people's lives for this organization I'm trying to be committed to. And sometimes when times are really rough, it's only the symbolic that really begins to work. Anyone have any other observations on it? It's been a while since I watched that speech. It's a pretty powerful speech, delivered 1963, I believe. And let me just say a few more words about this. Let me share. The four frames, it's kind of side by side here. In the political, you believe. Wait, let me go back one. In the structural, you emphasize rationality, as I said. The other one, people. And you're like most, each of you has certain preferences. If you're a structuralist, you're more likely to believe strongly in the importance of clear structure. And a good leader is someone who thinks clearly and makes good decisions, has good analytical skills, and can design structures. So if you're a good leader, you're going to be able to do that. Whereas in the human, you're going to emphasize the importance of people. The central task of management then is to develop that fit. And you believe in the importance then of coaching, participation, motivation, teamwork. These are all skills we talk about. A good leader is a facilitator who supports and empowers others. In the political, you believe you live in a competing world. And the central task of management is to mobilize resources and to advocate for people, to fight for them, fight for their ideas. Political leaders, you emphasize the importance of building a power base, allies, networks. That's what Rickover did. He built a phenomenal power base. He had tons of allies. He had big networks. He had coalitions. A good leader then becomes an advocate and negotiator who understands politics. And then symbolic, you believe that the essential task of management is to provide vision and inspiration. This is when we get into the aspect of vision, inspiration. Here's where we're going. They rely on personal charisma. It doesn't necessarily you need to be a charismatic leader to offer charisma. You want to get people excited and committed. A good leader is a prophet and visionary who uses symbols, tells stories, and frames things for people in ways that give hope and meaning, motivation. So, understanding these frames will help give you a sense of which approach or which combination of approach works best in a situation. let me just say a few words about the manager of as politician, because I think you need to be good politicians to be a good leader. And why does politics exist? Is because there's differences in an organization, there's scarce resources, and you have to rely on each other. So the dilemma for you is how do you confront the realities of diversity, scarcity, and self-interest and still channel human action in cooperative and socially valuable directions? That's the dilemma. How can you use your power without abusing it? And so the skills of a good politician are creating a vision that can gain support. Real importance of networking, phenomenal. It's really critical. Access relationships, create processes to deal with resistance, and then bargaining and negotiating become real important for the manager as a politician. And then another one I'll highlight a little bit, the manager as actor. For the symbolic frame, the metaphor is you're on a stage. And because of the ambiguity in our lives, situations that are fraught with uncertainty, we create symbols, myths, rituals, ceremonies to bring order, meaning, and predictability out of chaos. The symbolic is most effective when things seem to be in chaos. So, symbolic leaders frame and interpret experience for people. Symbolic leaders use symbols to get people's attention. They discover, communicate a vision. They tell stories that resonate with people. A symbolic leader understands the deepest values and most pressing concerns of his or her constituents. What action am I taking? How are people going to interpret it? That's what's important. So, when you think about leadership from these four frames, an effective structural leader, in a positive way, some would call them a social architect. An ineffective leader in this frame might be seen as a petty tyrant. An effective human leader is a catalyst, servant, and an ineffective one might be seen as a wimp or a pushover. A political leader can be seen as a great advocate. An ineffective one, you might be seen as a con artist or a hustler. These are the pluses and minuses. And an effective symbolic leader might be seen as a visionary, a prophet. Ineffective one, a fanatic or a fool. So here's the source of the book. Someone asked me in chat. It's called Reframing Organizations, Artistry, Choice, and Leadership. Lee Bowman and Terrence Deal. This was, I don't know if there's a newer one since then. I think this is the 7th edition of the book. So, I really wanted to spend a little time giving you the perspective on this. I think it's worth thinking about. And I gave you some handouts. You can think of almost any thing going on in your organization. If you're dealing with some interesting problems right now, step back a minute and see what perspective seems to be coming through a situation. You can look at any meeting you go to from each of these four frames. Some meetings in organizations hold are only for symbolic reasons. Or who's in a meeting? If they're looking at it from a structural point of view, political point of view, symbolic, etc. I used to work in an academic environment, and there used to be a meeting called University Council, and it was really symbolic of here's a group of everyone who comes together seemingly to deal with the university problems, but really not much heavy duty decision making came there. But it was symbolic that there was a group, and then who was representative became extremely important. So it was a symbol to the rest of the community that every major place had a voice in what was going on. You can look at meetings, you can look at almost anything from this framework. So I offer it to you as another way to develop some of your conceptual versatility. All right. Well, I see we have about 45 minutes. Does anyone have any thoughts or questions you might have on that? Any observations anyone have? Quiet group.
I just wanted to know what was the name of the book that you had referenced, the bureaucracy book
Oh,
that you said that was famous.
the name of the book was Bureaucracy.
Okay.
And I'm blocking on the name. It was a social scientist at the turn of the century. And bureaucracy he saw as a real positive. I'm really blocking on the name. It's going to bug me.
Was it like a foreign name?
Yeah, it sounded like it. Yeah,
Ludwig von Mises?
it
Was that
wasn't him. I think it was a German thinker. The basic feeling of bureaucracy was, at the time, everything was done through nepotism and favoritism. And he said for organizations to be effective, they have to be impersonal. In other words, you got to have job descriptions and people fit in jobs, and there's hierarchies, people how to communicate with each other, and then you hire talented people. And if the structure is working really well, the organization is going to function well. People are almost interchangeable in it. And it doesn't rely then on personal favoritism, who's getting paid and etc. And essentially was seen as a real positive movement. Our U.S. government jobs used to be all favoritism, and that's where bureaucracy has a negative connotation in terms of slowing things down, and sometimes the rules are opposite of each other, paradoxical. I'll try and find that out for you, Fran. It's bugging me that I can't
Yeah.
think.
Well, I'm just curious because I worked at a company in England, and I think particularly the English, or just, British in general, love their bureaucracy. And I experienced a lot of that firsthand, where, you know, everything seemed to have to be a process. Everything was complete this form and submit it for approval. You know, even feedback was a very structural process. After every engagement that I completed, if I worked so many hours on it, I had to complete a form and rate myself across like 4 or 5 different attributes, and then give myself an overall rating, and then send it to my senior on the job for them to rate me and assess me. Which I really, after, and that among other things really made me hate bureaucracy, which is why I always listen to what Jamie Dimon says about that, which is that I forget his quotes. He says bureaucracy is the petri dish of bad organizations or something like that. But I'm curious to read, or I would like to read this book to just, learn more about it, what the positives are proposed from it.
I'll get the history for
Yeah.
you. The other side of the coin is, if organizations don't develop some kind of procedures and directives, nothing's going to get done. It's going to be chaos. So you're trying to find the balance between, now the Rickover example, he was powerful enough to go against the bureaucracy to get things done. But that's always the dilemma. Creativity is the dilemma of organizations. How do you be creative when you let these structures develop that you have to, they don't allow for the creativity like you're talking about, Fran. It stifles any kind of creative change that needs to happen. I mean, we often wonder why buggy manufacturers never became auto manufacturers, stuff like that. Anyone have any other thoughts? All right. Next week is going to be a session on power. And kind of a little bit of follow. Think about this discussion on politics. I will have it'll be much like the session we did on stress. I have a couple videos and a quick discussion on power and an assignment with it. And then there's a small assignment associated with this, what I covered tonight. All right. Any other questions?
Should we plan on coming physically to class next Wednesday, or will it be another
No, it'll
be Zoom?
I'll make it a little more flexible next week. And then like over the next couple of weeks, you're going to be doing work on the major paper. We have, I think the week after, it's like the university has fall break. And I'm just letting us do that. We probably could have class then, but I figured I'd give you time to work on that paper, which is due after that. And then, all right. But next week I'll have the chapter on power for you to look at and discuss. All right. Anything else?